As a creative aspect, TV is one of the best things that we do as a species. Along with music and film and books, they bring out the best creative of all of us. They entertain and they bring so much joy to many. They invoke emotion and enable us to feel things that we bury sometimes deep down. That's what this podcast is for. Welcome to A Million Little TV Shows. This is what I call the breakdown while I break down. Each week I will go through a different TV show, a different season of that TV show, and different episodes of that show. And I will break down not only emotions, but I will break down stories from my life, and let you know why these TV shows mean so much to me, and why I believe that they are some of the most important shows out there. This podcast is here to highlight a lot of smaller TV shows, or TV shows that don't really get a platform, because we know of a bunch of TV shows that get a multitude of different podcasts. Ted Lasso, Game of Thrones, The Office, they've all got several podcasts out there analysing all types of different things. But there's not many out there for the little guy, and that's what I'm trying to highlight. So each week I will go through a different show, different seasons, different episodes, and I will go across all different kinds of genres and different countries to bring you what I believe is some of the best TV out there. So I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you're here for this journey. And if you've watched the shows before and you wanted to come here and get an analysis on them and have someone go through them and pick out bits that you might have enjoyed, then I'm glad you are here. If, however, you have never watched the show and you just want to come and have someone talk in your ear about different TV shows, I'm glad you are here. But I hope that it inspires some people to go and seek out these TV shows. They deserve to be watched. They were made with love and care, and they are the same as this podcast, made with love and care. I am your host, Mike, and I will take you through every adventure, every horror, every piece of drama, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now episode 13 of season 9, and this is the final episode of this season, and also this is the final 3 episodes of Inside Number 9 that we're going to be covering today. Again, there is one more season of this show left, and I cannot wait to get into it. Again, as people know, wasn't the biggest fan of the last 2 episodes, but we'll get through it, I'm sure. And I'll probably see the light on those 2 episodes as well when I actually get to them once again. But as for the show, I think it just ended on a bit of a flat note, but these next 3 episodes that I'm going to cover are great. So I can't wait to get into them, and I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. And I'm going to reiterate what we're watching next season first, because we've got a lot of good stuff coming up. And there's going to be a couple of new things in there as well, and a couple of things that we're just going to be finishing off. So, next season, we're going to be covering Mindhunter Season 1. Now, as you know, I covered both Hannibal and Clarice, and Mindhunter is in that same sort of category. It's not built in the fantasy world of Silence of the Lambs, but it is dedicated to actual serial killers, so I want to cover that. We're going to be going back into Inside Number 9 for Season 9, and that is the final season of that show. And yeah, it's a shame to see it go, but I'm kind of glad that it is, because it's been a long old haul to get this actually over and done with. Not that I don't love the show, I will go back and rewatch in my leisure time, but yeah, such a good show. We're starting a thing called Friends from College, which a friend of the podcast over on YouTube actually stated that they wanted me to cover, so I've thrown that in there for this season. We're going to be covering season 1 of that, and it's just a fun show, starring Fred Savage and Kobe Smulders, which I adore her, and Fred Savage is basically part of my youth, so it's always good to see him in stuff. We'll be going back into Loudermilk and seeing what that sassy arsehole has to say in season 2, and I can't wait for that. That is from another friend of the podcast. And finally, we will be getting on to Miracle Workers Season 3. Now, it's been a long time since we've done any Miracle Workers, but I cannot wait to get back into it. I'm going to cover that, and then in the next season I'm going to cover it again for Season 4, and we're going to be done with that as well. It's been such a long time since we have covered it, so there's no catch-up to do, because it's basically a standalone season, as they all have been, but it's just nice to see, especially Daniel Radcliffe, watch him doing his thing with Steve Buscemi and Geraldine Viswanathan, who has just blown up in the last few years since doing that show. You know, I love it. I love it so much. So we're going to get into that as well. But today we are back with Season 9, and today we are covering Inside Number 9. So let's get into it. So this is Inside Number 9, Season 8, Episodes 4 to 6. Episode 4, Love is a Stranger. This episode stars Claire Rushbrook as Vicky, Matthew Horn as Edgar, Frances Barber as Leslie, Asim Chowdhury as Jai, Pemberton as Manny, and Shearsmith as Norman. And so we see a woman, Vicky, who looks like she's getting ready for a date. And just in the background we hear a news report of someone called the Lonely Hearts Killer, who has been taking a lot of different victims, and it seems has become quite prevalent in the area. Vicky then sits down at her computer, and it seems that she's on one of these speed dating websites. A man pops up, Edgar, and he starts talking to her generally about, the usual questions about who she is, what her name is, and all that kind of stuff. Vicky is very cautious about telling him any information, obviously due to the nature of what's been going on in the area. She says that she's not happy to give out any information, but eventually she does. She's only got 4 minutes on each person, and so she's trying to get through as many of these dates as possible, just to find out if she can find the one. Edgar, however, seems a little bit dismissive of her, and towards the end of the conversation, he basically says that even though Vicky seems into him, he'd rather wait for the next person and see if they get along better, even though Vicky believes that they were getting on perfectly fine. And so she's introduced to this world of dating as if this is it from now on, that she's going to be getting these kind of rejections. She then starts speaking to a man named Norman. Norman is very straightforward, and he just wants to basically know information about her. It seems that he is making sort of a profile of everyone that comes up. He asks a bunch of questions, and he writes the answers down that Vicky gives. Eventually, Vicky manages in the last minute to get her own question in and asks if they were ever to date, where would he take her? He tells her of a time when he used to visit a certain park with his mother, Kensington Park, I believe it was, and they used to go and see the statue of Peter Pan. He tells her that he lost his mother recently, and she says, I did the same. It seemed that she was caring for her mother for such a long time, and now she's finally been able to get back out into the world. But just as Vicky gets up the courage to ask whether he would like to go on that very date with her, Norman tells her, no, you look nothing like my mother, and the call ends. The next call comes up, and it's a man named Manny. He is a bit more lively than the other two. Edgar looked off his face mainly, and Norman was just very stuck up. Manny seems a little bit more Vicky style, a little bit bubbly, a little bit cheeky chappy, and Vicky seems to enjoy the conversation. However, with it being Pemberton, every time that certain things come up, his attitude changes, and the look on his face changes, and we see that maybe this is the killer sat right in front of her. After a moment or two, as these two are getting on so well, there is a knock at Manny's door. In comes a woman named Polly, who he refers to as Love. Vicky is confused by all of this until Polly actually sees Vicky on the screen. She comes over and Manny tells Polly that it's just a client, don't worry about it. It's just one of the people I'm trying to help. But Polly comes in closer and sees that it is this dating website. At this point, Polly starts to blame Vicky as if it's her fault that her man is on a site. She doesn't seem to have a go at Manny at all. She just has a go at Vicky and tells her that she's desperate and that she needs to find her own man because this one's Polly's. And of course, I don't understand blaming the victim because you're both victims in this case. Manny is the one that should have been blamed in this. But hey ho. Throughout the whole episode, we keep seeing shots from the past where Vicky is on the computer talking to these people, and shots from the present where Vicky is getting ready for this date. But not only that, we see things like gloved hands and Vicky inviting someone into the house. After the call with Manny, Vicky then speaks to a woman named Leslie. Leslie tells her that she's not bi, she's not a lesbian. It seems like they've seen the name Leslie and thought that it was a man, so they just keep giving her to these women. And so she tends to just have a 4-minute conversation with these women and find out information about the people that they've actually been dating online, swapping funny stories and just having a bit of a giggle. It seems, however, though, Leslie keeps writing things down as she keeps having this conversation with Vicky. Eventually, Vicky gets wise to it and asks, why are you doing this? it seems that Leslie is actually a marketer, and she's actually trying to sell like a diet plan. And she says, I come on these things because I get to speak to desperate women like you, and I could just sell them this fucking product and get away with it. And it's no skin off my nose. We get 4 minutes together and then it's done. And if you want to have my contact details, you get them and you get the product and I sell you stuff and it doesn't really matter. Vicky's apoplectic and she tells her, look, you can go fuck yourself. And just as Vicky's about to give up on all of this, she's confronted by a mouse. On the screen comes the head of a mouse, a big cartoon mouse, and she doesn't know what to think of it at first. She thinks the guy's taking the piss, in all fairness, and he makes up a story about how he can't actually get this off. It's no good. He's been trying for ages. His kids actually are the ones who put it on there for him, and he can't turn it off. This is Jai. Vicky and Jai keep having this conversation back and forth, and when they're a little bit more at ease with each other, Jai takes a drink of his beer. It's here that the filter actually falls off his face, and we see that he has some either birthmarks or scarring on his face, and Vicky realises why he's trying to hide himself. She tells him what she saw, and she says, you don't have to do this. Turn it off and we can chat properly. As he does, they begin to chat more, and they begin to engage more right up until the last 20 seconds. They realise that they actually do want to see each other, and Jai gives her his number before they get cut off. It's then revealed that it is Jai who is now in her flat. He doesn't seem as cute and as cuddly as he did when he was on screen, and he seems a bit of a menace. He tells her that the dress that she's wearing is a little too common. He's basically seen this a few times during the week. He gifts her a necklace, and when she gets up to go and sort out the dinner that she's making for them, Jai follows her into the kitchen. It seems that Jai is a bit creepier than we would have expected. And then the next thing is he moves in for the kiss, which within the first 20 minutes of meeting this guy, he's already trying to kiss her. She pushes him away and he apologises. He tells her he's been on one of these dating courses run by fucking idiots, and they are fucking idiots. One of these manosphere fucking pieces of shit. And that he has to neg the woman first. That he has to be a prick to her before she'll sleep with him. Fucking morons. So she tells him, look, you've just let yourself down. Like, we could have had a good evening, we could have had a fun night, but what the hell are you doing? She tells him that she's going to go and set the table, and he's like, look, I didn't even want any dinner. I just wanted to move things along quickly between us and see where it got me. He then starts looking at the window and looking at the jars that are sat in front of it. As he goes along, Vicky's talking about why you would do such a thing, especially in the world that they're currently inhabiting, when there's people dying out there and there's a mad killer on the loose. And it's here that Jai comes across a jar of ring fingers, because Vicky is the Lonely Hearts killer. She walks over to Jai and he's trapped in fear. It looks like she has a tenderizing hammer in her hand, and she walks up to him and whacks him around the head with it. And she tells him that dating people in this kind of environment is easy, because if you don't like them, you just swipe left. Now, what I love about this episode is obviously the subversion of it, because in the society that we currently live in, unfortunately, it is usually men that are the killer, and to subvert it as it's the woman makes it even better. Now, I think from the first get-go, you kind of go, well, it's obviously her who's the killer. But then I feel like the episode actually takes you on a journey to the point where it says, you thought one thing, and actually it's another, but actually it's the thing you thought. And throughout, you can see the development of Vicky's character, and how she probably would have morphed into this person, this killer. And it's just such a fun concept, because, like I said, you're always expecting the serial killer to be a man. And then we also get a situation where Jai is visibly uncomfortable with his own look, and with everything that we know about serial killers, from the amount of fucking podcasts out there and TV shows and all sorts of stuff, that is the kind of person that would be the killer. Someone who is uncomfortable in their own body and just wants to make themselves feel better. And all throughout, you're forgetting that Vicky is the exact same. She's uncomfortable in her body, and throughout the episode, she gets insulted. Right up until the point she finds someone who she thinks is a good guy, and turns out he's not. he is. He's just mistaken in the way that he handles himself. But also, I think the fact that Pemberton and Shearsmith take a backdrop to this episode is very clever as well, because Pemberton as Manny seems to be very charming, very fun-loving, and until you realise that he's got a girlfriend or a wife, it really sets him up as this sort of, oh, it's going to be him. Okay, we thought it was going to be Vicky because of the way that the episode is shot, but no, it's going to be Manny because he's just got that twinkle in his eye. Pemberton always plays Sinister so well, and the music in this is fucking chilling, so it just adds to it. And it makes it feel like Pemberton is the one that's going to be the killer. And then eventually, we find out that he's got a girlfriend and the call gets cut off, so he wouldn't have contact with Vicky after that. But yeah, I think it's a very clever episode. I really enjoy it. And I love seeing Asim Chowdhury and stuff, because I loved him on Taskmaster. I think he's fun. And he's just like a big cuddly bear, really. And he just seems like a nice guy. So seeing him in this role was quite interesting and, yeah, really fun. But let's crack on. Episode 5, Hold On Tight. No, wait, 3x3. So we start off, and this is a quiz show hosted by Lee Mack. And Lee Mack is one of the funniest comedians going in Britain right now. He's great in the roles that he plays, and he's great at the things that he does. However, in this role, he is playing the presenter of a brand new quiz show called 3x3, which takes 3 teams of 3 and pits them against each other. And so we end up with these 3 teams: the Tenors, the Oakwoods, and the Big Wins. The Tenors are a group of singers who found each other online and set up a sort of church singing group throughout COVID and managed to keep it going till they all became friends and ended up on the show. The Oakwoods are a family, the mother, father, and their daughter, Catherine. And the Big Wins are a group of 3 fairly young, I'd say student-age adults, probably early 20s, who all seem to have a similar backstory, that they've known each other for a while and they've sort of dated in and around each other. So they all get along and they all know each other really well. And so the first round is essentially each member of the team gets asked a question. If they fail on that question, they get frozen out of the game, and they also lose £100 from their kitty, which is currently set at 300. Everything in the game is done by 3s, obviously. And so in the first round, the Tenors lose one of their members, the Oakwoods lose 2 of their members, and the Big Wins lose none of their members. So at the end, the Big Wins have £600, the Tenors have £400, and the Oakwoods have £200. The teams with the frozen out members are then offered, if they want to bring back their player into the fold, they have to spend an extra £100. Catherine decides to bring her mother back into the fold, but not her father, and her father has to leave the show. But by this point, you're kind of feeling a tension within that family. Catherine is very quiet, and you're unsure as to why. It seems that the mother is quite overbearing, and again, we're unsure what's really going on there. And Lee Mack is one of those comedians who can bounce off people really well, but if they're not willing to engage with him, a lot of his jokes fall flat. So everything that he's throwing at these people is just falling flat, and it is feeling awkward within the studio. They then go on to the next round, which is a quick-fire round. They go through the questions, and just at the end, Catherine manages to pull it off and even answers a question without actually hearing the full question. And so the Oakwoods end up knocking out the Tenors. The Tenors leave the show, and it is left with the Oakwoods versus the Big Wins. They then play a game of tic-tac-toe, or noughts and crosses, whichever your preference. And the Big Wins start. It seems like they have a good start on the board, and when one of the team members gets a question about who was the donkey from Shrek played by, he stumbles over it and ends up giving the name David Jason, which is evidently wrong. Eventually, Catherine picks up that it was Eddie Murphy, and they end up going on to win the round. And so, coming from behind, the Oakwoods have ended up going right through to the final. Throughout the final, Catherine's mother is placed in a box. Whenever she is in this box and the lights go out, she can hear nothing. And so the basis of the quiz is that Catherine must answer the question, and then her mother must answer the same question, and they must come out with the same answer. Lee starts to ask the question. The first question is, what is the longest river in Europe? Catherine isn't sure, and she keeps making hints throughout the show that she isn't allowed to listen to music, that she's only allowed to study, and that she hasn't been anywhere, she hasn't travelled anywhere because she's not allowed to really go anywhere. And it seems that her mother Margaret is very overbearing, and throughout gives this stern exterior to the point where it seems that Catherine seems scared of her for some reason. The current total that they have is £1,500, and each time they get a question right, that will treble. However, if they miss out on any questions, it will only end up going back down to £1,500. So it doesn't matter what their total is at the end. If they get the question wrong, that's it. And so both answer the river question as the vulgar, and of course they are right. So their amount triples. And so the next question, which is going to get them onto 13,500, is asked, and it is, who was the first person to reach, I think it's over 1 million subscribers on TikTok? And it seems that both Margaret and Catherine would have lived a very sheltered life, and they wouldn't know this specific answer. But Catherine digs deep, and all of a sudden she comes out with the name Charlie D'Amelio. Eventually the lights come back on in the booth, and Margaret has to think about it really hard. However, at that point, the name David Jason comes to her for some reason, which is obviously one that we've had earlier. You've got to watch both sides of the screen to see what's going on, but all of a sudden, Catherine moves quickly as her nose starts to bleed. She wipes it up quickly with her sleeve, but manages to compose herself, and her mother answers the question correctly. And so now they're on 13,500. The next question will bag them £40,000. When asked what they're going to do with that money, Catherine says that she'd love to go travelling, maybe New Zealand, and start from there. Her mother says that what they're actually going to do is they're going to do out the basement, and that is where Catherine is going to stay when she's doing her studying. And we can see now that her mother has a hold over Catherine. Lee tries to break the tension by essentially saying, look, you could probably buy both of those things if you end up winning 40 grand, so let's just crack on with the quiz. The final question is, Tracy Lauren Marrow is better known as whom? And so Catherine begins to really think about this question. She starts to break it down. She knows that it's a rapper because the rapper part is in the question. I just forgot to say it. But eventually she comes out with the name Ice-T. The lights come back on in the booth, and her mother Margaret then answers the same question. However, when she comes out with it, she comes out with the name Fur-Q. She even spells it out. But obviously by now we are realising that there is a connection between the two of them. Somehow, some way, something is getting through. And it seems that Catherine is now disobeying this connection with her mother, and she's told her the wrong answer. Obviously, only one of them gets the right answer, and so they go back down to £1,500, and Lee starts to wrap up the show. He tells Catherine that, hey, maybe you can still get that ticket to New Zealand. And she says, yeah, maybe a one-way ticket. And we hear her mother in the booth coming out saying, yeah, over my dead body. It's then as Margaret goes to open the door that it is mysteriously shut against her. Lee comes to the front of the studio and he's trying to give the end monologue, and he's asking the contestants to come and stand with him. However, neither of them do. We just see Margaret in the background struggling, and then all of a sudden her head explodes. There is chaos on the set, and the only person stood there is Catherine, unblinking and uncaring about her mother who's just died. As the show goes off air, we get the general credit roll for a daytime quiz show, and then it blends in with the Inside Number 9 theme, and we realise that we've just watched a masterclass of TV excellence, because this is one of the best episodes that there has ever been of this show. It was even advertised in the paper as being an On the Buses spin-off, which is an old 70s show, and as I started the episode, I alluded to that. The actual episode in the paper was called Hold On Tight. And in a lot of cases in Britain, if you end up with a show that isn't allowed to be aired or doesn't get aired, but is advertised that night, you will end up getting some sort of quiz show put in its place. And so this is why there was a cold open to the show. We never really got introduced to anyone apart from the fact that Lee Mack was presenting this quiz show. And it was a brand new quiz show. And so after 8 seasons of Inside Number 9, they're still shocking us. They're still making this feel incredible, because I believe that they were running ads for this Hold On Tight. And when you come into the episode and it ends up being this quiz show, that's a massive risk to take, because you don't know what's going on. Are you going to sit and end up watching this show that you're not really that invested in. It seems to be a bit of a crap game show, and then you realise that there's something not right here. I remember watching this episode and being like, there's something not right here, what is going on? I don't understand. This is meant to be sort of an on the buses type deal, but as soon as the family Oakwood is actually put in front of you, you get this feeling of something's not quite right here. And the best bit about this is there's no Pemberton and there's no Shearsmith. So when you're watching it, you're like, is this inside number 9 or is it not? Like, I don't understand what is going on. It's mind-melding and brilliant, and I fucking loved it. Such a good episode and a really impressive penultimate episode. But let's get into the final one, which is equally as good. And finally, for this episode and this season, episode 6, The Last Weekend. In this episode, we've got Molly, played by Sheila Reid, Pemberton as Joe, and Shearsmith as Chaz. Chaz and Joe arrive at a house in the country. It seems that they are a couple and that they've been together for a fair while now. Chaz seems to be the fussy one of the couple, and Joe is kind of chilled out. He isn't letting the little things affect him as much as Chaz is. Chaz, however, wants this weekend to be perfect because it seems that these two have been together for now 9 years. Chaz starts blaming the cleaner Molly for the amount of dirt and the fact that this holiday home that they've got for themselves just always seems to be musty whenever they turn up. Molly is meant to be looking after it while they're away, and she obviously hasn't been doing a great job. Joe, once again, just doesn't want Chaz to ruin anything, so he's just kind of trying to keep him sweet and just chill him out a little bit. They're meant to be there for the weekend to just enjoy themselves. But there seems to be some tension between the two of them. They begin to unpack and Joe goes into the bathroom. He opens the medicine cabinet and starts taking out a litany of prescription medication. And we can only assume that this is for some illness that Joe has. While Chad heads off and starts to go and make dinner, we see the problem that Joe is having. He goes and takes a piss, and while he's in there, we actually see from inside the bowl outwards looking at Joe through the water. However, the water is a dark red colour. So whatever it is, it's affecting him badly enough that he's now pissing blood. They keep making reference to the fact that it's 9 years, and they continue to hope that there are 9 years more, but knowing what we know, the potential is there may not be another year left. Joe has left his phone in the kitchen, and when it starts ringing, Chaz looks at it and is about to take it to him, but sees the name Mick on there, with a kiss emoji, a heart emoji, and an eggplant emoji. And so I'm sure we all know in the age we live in what that means. Chaz doesn't say anything, even though, in fairness, he would be the more dramatic and would want to be the one who would say something about this. But for now, he just leaves it. He doesn't know the backstory of any of it and doesn't want to cause too much of a problem this weekend. They sit down to dinner that night and everything seems to be going well, but when a certain turn of phrase comes up, the two start to argue. It's about the old rhyme that people used to say, milk, milk, lemonade. And they begin to argue about what the end sentence is. And then we see that Chaz is the more childish one of the two and asks Alexa what the actual saying is. Joe gets pissed off with him and just says, look, I'm done with this. I'm going to bed. Chaz realises his mistake and it's revealed that Joe has cancer and that he certainly doesn't have long to live at all. They make up and Joe heads off to bed. Chaz follows him much later on, but only after trying to hack into his phone. It's one of those pattern unlocks, and he tries C for Chaz. When it isn't that, he tries M for Mick, and the phone opens. And Chaz begins to realise that maybe this Mick is someone who is important. But, to be fair, it could be M for anything. The next day they are hosting Molly, who is their cleaner. Chaz starts to tell her all about his former life and how he was nearly a pop star. He said that they had one popular hit way back when he was in this boy band and this full routine and all sorts. But what used to happen is he used to take the piss out of his fans quite a lot. He'd go on MySpace at the time and find fans and then basically mock them online. Seemed like he was a bit of a fucking scumbag while he was doing this career. And so he's pleased that he actually managed to grow out of that and has lived a better life than what he previously had. That night, however, Joe has told Chaz that he is going to pamper him. He's ended up putting some sort of porridge concoction together, and he's giving it to Chaz to spread on his face. It's like honey and milk and oats, and it's meant to be sort of a face pack. But Chaz just looks like he's got lesions. But that's not the end of it, it would seem. Joe tells Chaz that he's done the one thing that they wanted to do years ago. He's run him a bath. In fact, he's made sure that it's a mud bath, the way that he wanted it a few years ago when they were trying to go on holiday but couldn't because of Joe's illness. Before stepping into the bath, Chaz begins to ask about Mick. Joe reassures him and says, look, it's short for Michaela. It's just one of my Macmillan nurses. They look after me. We connected and they gave me their number and they're just checking in. They're just a nice person who wants me to get through this with as little pain as possible. And so they're just trying to look after me. Chaz, relieved by this, goes and takes his mud bath. Joe takes Chaz's glass, takes it through to the other room and fills it with wine. He then takes out a small piece of tinfoil and we see that there is a white powder in there, and he drops it in Chaz's drink. The next time we see Chaz, he is passed out, and it turns out that the bath he is in isn't a mud bath, but what it actually is quick-set concrete. Chaz is now trapped in this bath, trapped in concrete. When Joe comes through and he asks what the hell he thinks he's doing, Joe breaks character. He tells him that for 9 years we've been doing this, me and you, we've been doing this dance. And the reason is that several years ago on MySpace, you spoke to our daughter. And he shows him a picture of a 13-year-old girl who was once a fan of Chaz's. But while on MySpace, she started posting lyrics of songs that she'd written, and Chaz came on and told her how shit she was. Told her that she should go kill herself. And so, taking the advice of someone that she admired, she did just that. However, Joe and his wife at the time actually found their daughter and managed to get her to hospital, but it was too late. They managed to put her on life support for the next 9 years, but it wasn't enough. Eventually, one day, they had to turn her off. And it was since then that Joe has been hunting down Chaz. He found out exactly what happened, and he found out exactly who had done it, and he went after them. And so, for the last 9 years, as much as he's hated some of the things that he's had to do to be in this relationship with Chaz, he's made Chaz all along think that he gave a shit about him and that he cared. But since Joe had nothing to lose, he wanted his sweet revenge. Joe opens the window and tells Chaz that now he is locked in concrete with milk, honey and oats on his face. Joe is going to leave him right where he is. They're out in the middle of nowhere, no one's going to hear him, and he also tells him that he has sacked Molly from her job. So she is now headed back to Glasgow. So nobody is going to come looking for him, and nobody is going to care that he is there. And now with this window open, Joe tells Chaz that he's going to do something that the ancient Egypts used to do. They would bury people, and then they would let the flies start to nibble away at them until they actually laid eggs under their skin. All of these different things would then attract rats, which would then attract other wildlife. And Joe tells him that sometimes this can last up to 17 days before the person dies. And so after 9 years of torture, waiting for his daughter, and now 9 years of revenge, trying to get back at this man who effectively cost him something so important, Joe is going to wait, and he's just going to let Chaz perish for what he did. This is a chilling episode. This really is so dark, and I remember watching this for the first time, and I mean it was only a few years ago, so you know what my memory's like on this show. I tend to forget a lot of stuff, but I remember watching this episode and just being in awe of it, because obviously the previous episode was the 3x3 episode where they did the fake quiz, and then this one was like back to the old routine. But again, it's another twist on the kind of things that they do, and it blew me away. It was so beautifully done. Like, Pemberton and Shearsmith have been together for so long now that you could kind of see this being what their relationship is a bit like. I'm not saying that they're in a homosexual relationship together at all, but you can see like the tension between them and how sometimes it must just get so frustrating for the two of them to be constantly known as like the League of Gentlemen guys. But sometimes it must feel like they are just in a relationship together. And of course they are, professionally and obviously friendships, but you get what I kind of mean. So yeah, I just found this episode stunning and terrifying at the same time, because it's such a simple concept to be able to take someone out to the middle of nowhere and know that no one's really going to miss them, and then to essentially bury them in concrete once again, knowing nobody's really going to miss them. And the way that they think these things up is mind-boggling, because throughout you keep seeing signs, like the stages of grief. And obviously you can't see the wood for the trees in this case, because they keep showing you that this relationship is breaking down, and that's all it is. There is a relationship breakdown, and that Joe is going to go off and be with someone else. What you don't see coming, and it is literally like a throwaway line about the MySpace thing, is that Pemberton is literally waiting for the end of the episode, so that he can bury this man who cost him so much. So, yeah, absolutely brilliant episode. I love it. I loved it so much. I've loved this series. I love the show, and I can't wait to get into season 9. I really can't. I know I keep complaining about the last 2, but I just can't. It's just so good. Anyway, I'm done for today. So just a quick reminder of what we're getting into next season, which again won't be a massive change. It will be next week that this will be back. I won't be taking any time off. And so in season 10, we will be covering Mindhunter season 1, Inside Number 9 season 9, Friends from College season 1, Loudermilk season 2, and Miracle Workers season 3. But for now, from me, thank you very much for listening. I'm so glad you guys are here. Obviously, you know that we've got adverts on the podcast now, so if you could give them a listen too as well, that'd be great, because it just helps this podcast, and I don't ask for much. But anyway, until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye. As always, thank you for listening to this podcast, and you could really help me and the podcast by giving a like, share, subscribe on all major platforms that you listen to podcasts on. As an independent podcaster, this will just help me exponentially when it comes to actually doing more things with this podcast. I truly do enjoy this, and I absolutely love revisiting these TV shows with you guys. So any engagement from you is always welcome, and I will try and listen to all of you when you give suggestions or just tell me what you think about the podcast. But once again, thank you for listening, and until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye.